welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and here with me today for another Top 10 Countdown video is Dennis, and today we're counting down the top 10 horror films of the 1990s, and we got plenty to talk about, so we're going to dive right into that list. And Dennis, how you feeling today? What do you think of 90s horror?
I'm feeling good, and honestly, when we started doing this, obviously, if you're following the channel, we did 70s and 80s, we got 90s, 2000s, 10s, we're going to do 20s, we're really banging these all out. I thought 80s was going to really steal the show for me, but looking back at it all, 90s was a really good decade for horror.
90s was actually a lot harder of a list to make as well. Like, honestly, the easiest list to make was the 70s. Like,
oh, yeah.
The 80s and 90s were the toughest for me. Very hard because, we do 1 through 10. But my 11 through even 30, I'm like 80s and 90s. I love all those movies too. Like you saw our 80s video, and I said movies from my like Dennis had 10, he had Gremlins. I fucking love Gremlins. Like, it kills me that didn't make my list.
No, I agree, and it's the same thing with the 90s too. With all these lists, like we say in all the beginning, at the beginning of all the videos, is it's not top 10 best of all time. It's personal flavor, what we like the most, what scared us the most, all that. I feel like my 6 and down could change on a whim, and then there's even films like you said 11 through 15 to 20 to 30 where they're all so good, and it's just the 10 that I picked just have like the most significant memories tied to them. But really it could change like that because there are a lot of great films that didn't make this cut.
I agree. There was a ton. So as you guys might know, we're doing top 10 rules. So if we have we're going to go one apiece, and if we have maybe we have a movie that overlaps, we'll punt that to the higher point on the list and we'll talk about it when we get to it. So Dennis, number 10.
My number 10 is one I absolutely guarantee did not make your list, which is Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah, wow, you weren't kidding when you said I wouldn't like your number 10.
I told you.
Fucking shark movie. God damn it. I knew you loved these movies, but Deep Blue Sea, really?
Deep Blue Sea, man. I will tell you this.
LL Cool J and Samuel Jackson did it for you?
All right. It's a terrible movie. Okay. I will be honest. Up front, right out of the gate, it's horrible.
They recognize that gun.
It's impossible. Sharks do not swim backwards. They can't.
It's a shark movie. There's no shark movie that'll ever come near Jaws. But this one, I was young when it came out, and I loved Jaws so much, so I was, all in for shark movies. And there are just so many highlights in this film. And yes, some of the highlights are because they're terrible, like when Samuel L. Jackson gets killed.
Gets eaten by a shark ate me!
It's just... The CGI is horrible. It's so bad, but it's like you always talk about when we did the 80s list, the 80s cheese.
I love the 80s cheese.
This is like 90s cheese.
Oh, 100%.
It's so bad. It's probably cringy for a lot of people, but it just holds a special place in my heart because I always used to watch it and just kind of, I enjoyed it from the beginning to the end because it's almost so bad it's good.
Oh, listen, I support your decision. I hate this movie, so I don't have anything good to say. Yeah. I'm not, and the thing is like people who like sharks and shark movies, I get why they like all the other ones, but for me, because I don't like sharks or shark movies, I don't care to see any of these. Like, I've never seen a Sharknado movie. Actually, probably would like those because they're so stupid.
Yeah,
so I'd probably enjoy them because I really enjoy dumb movies.
Yeah.
So, maybe one day, but no, that did not make my list.
That is fine.
My number 10 is a Stephen King adaptation, and as we've established, you're a big Stephen King guy, and it's Misery.
That is actually not on here.
Have you seen it?
I have.
So I just rewatched this not too long ago, and I forgot how good this movie is.
All right.
The reason it's at 10 is because I don't know if it's 100% a horror film. Mm-hmm. It's definitely more of a drama film.
Yeah.
It's really based on Stephen King's basically Fear fans. Like, hey, the main character of this movie is a writer, played by James Caan. Mm-hmm. And Kathy Bates, she finds him, brings him home, but won't let him leave. And then that hobbling scene. Just what I want to do to you so bad. Like,
Ah, nice.
Yeah. One day, and you ain't leaving.
Yeah, when I'm suddenly on every video here, you'll understand that I am not.
You never see his legs. He's just in a wheelchair.
I mean, listen, this film was important enough that Family Guy did a spoof of it.
Oh, it's a good spoof, too.
It is great. But I agree, it's really good. I think that's one of the reasons, and ironic because my number 9 is kind of the same thing. I don't view it as a horror movie.
Yeah, so that's why I put it low. Because I really, honestly, as far as a film goes, it's such a well-made movie. Mm-hmm. It's directed by Rob Reiner. So it's a great movie.
Yeah.
But yes, the horror elements, it's much more of like a thriller.
Yeah.
I think. So that's why it's at 10 for me.
Agreed, but a solid choice.
Thank you.
Which brings us actually ironically to my number 9, which is the same thing. I picked it. It's not so much a horror film, it's more thriller, which is 7.
7 didn't make my list. Hold on, let me make sure it didn't make my list. No, it didn't make my list, but I fucking love 7, so go for it. It was close, but for that exact, I could only put one movie on here that I felt like was floating the line. But no, 7 is a great choice. It's my favorite David Fincher movie. So talk about it.
All right, yeah, no, I think it's one of those ones that's just it's so memorable. I mean, obviously everyone knows the "What's in the box" thing. So like,
what is in the box?
Yeah, I don't think it was ice cream cake.
Damn it, that sucks. All the way to the desert for nothing.
Yeah, but obviously follows the plot of the serial killer who's 7 deadly sins and all that, and it's Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, and I think they do really well bouncing off of each other.
They do a great partnership.
Yeah, and I just think it's more like almost like a true crime kind of thing, and it's not so horror movie like slasher or jump scares or anything. I think it's just more eerie and ominous because it's one of those where like the killer is doing this and you're almost like, huh. Mm-hmm. Is he right though?
I think speaking of settings, I think the setting is what makes it scary. It's never ever not raining outside until they go to the desert. Yep. When they find these dead bodies, oh my god, some of them, especially the fat guy, and they have the air fresheners hanging, like that's a scary scene. It gets under your skin.
Yep.
So that stuff. The only thing, so the reason why this is my favorite David Fincher. I just didn't put it on my list because I felt it was a little bit too much of a drama. But that was I had to pick one. So it was Misery. Like this is number 11.
Yeah.
If I was doing a David Fincher list, which is on this channel somewhere, this is number 1.
Okay.
I fucking love this movie, so I'm really glad it's on your list.
All right, good.
And you said I was going to be upset with this being on your list.
No, well, I guess you're right. That's so. Wait till we get to my number 6. You're gonna be pissed.
My number 9 is the third film in the Evil Dead franchise, Army of Darkness.
Oh, okay, didn't make my list, so let's talk about it.
At the very end of Evil Dead 2, if you never saw it, he gets sent to like medieval times. I can't remember the exact time, but he gets sent there with his shotgun, and basically now he's got to fight the living dead again. But this time they're all done in like stop motion. I mean, this movie, there's a bunch of little ashes killing these zombies. This is just a comedy movie. That's all I ever look at this movie as. But it's a horror comedy, so I had to put it on my list. That's why it's at number 9. I'll admit, I sit there watching this movie with a shit-eating grin on my face. It's just fun. It's like very dumb, just like you would expect it to be, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I enjoyed it too, and I think that's the thing is, with this list, we call it horror movies, but I think thriller can kind of creep in there, and horror comedy, I think, absolutely has a right to be in here, because if they're done well, I remember when we did our 70s one, you talked about Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So, and, in my 80s, I had Gremlins, which is more kind of a comedy, like, if it has horror elements but is funny, I think it deserves a spot on this list, and that's one that I definitely agree.
It's in the Evil Dead franchise, so I think it actually has enough. But yeah, you could just see the trajectory of the franchise. The first one's a horror movie. The second one's like a perfect blend between horror and comedy, and then the third one, it's a comedy with some horror.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a comedy movie.
Yeah, they completed the evolution at that point, which makes sense.
Yeah, and then they rebooted it, so you never have to even worry about that again unless you watch the show.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is Sleepy Hollow.
That did not make my list, but why didn't it make my list? I'm not too sure, actually, why that didn't make my list, because Sleepy Hollow is a great movie. Wow. But, go for it.
I'm offended by you. Just right out of the gate, the setting we talk about.
That's my favorite part of the movie.
I think the setting is the movie. Everything, the Sleepy Hollow, the village, the buildings, the fog, the gray... Just the overall gray tone sometimes can wash a movie out, but this fits so perfectly with the story. The acting obviously is fine. The story too, I feel like it's weird because The Headless Horseman is something everybody knows about. Mm-hmm. Yet there's been one movie made about it?
It's weird. It's funny, when I think of The Headless Horseman, I always think of the headless cab driver from Hey Arnold. That's always what I think of. I don't think of this first, but well, it's really the setting, and the story does come a little convoluted by the end of it, how they kind of explain what was going on. It almost was like they put too many red herrings and just to mislead you.
Yeah.
But the setting is so good, and it would behoove me not to bring up the fact that there is a beautiful 4K Blu-ray of this out there. So I have to bring it up. If it drags it down for me, it's just the story and plot.
Yeah, and that's the thing, which is ironic, because everyone knows the Headless Horseman, and I think that the story kind of tells itself. So they did overdo it a little bit again. The setting, absolutely beautiful. They killed it with that. The story was fine. I think the Headless Horseman himself was really cool. Actually.
Oh, awesome. Christopher Walken.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can't go wrong with that.
No.
Again, is it really like a horror movie? No, I mean, you're not going to be scared of it, but I think it's one of those ones that made it because it falls in the horror genre, but it's a good film.
I agree. And there's an aspect of this movie I wish they would have explored a little bit more in this movie, which is Johnny Depp is like basically the beginning of like a CSI guy or like a like an FBI investigator, and everybody looks at him for like being an asshole because he's not doing the job that he's supposed to be doing. He's trying to bring science to it. Yeah. And I love that arc, and it's cool to see how, every time we try and just get a little bit smarter, you're going to get a lot of pushback from the people who don't want things to change. And, that story still reflects itself today. And I like that they snuck that in there just a little bit, but I don't think they lived up to it for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I think this would have been a really good like trilogy of movies to really explore it. Or maybe even if you did one that was just the Headless Horseman killing people, then the second could have been like a prequel exploring who the Headless Horseman was and why. And I think if they expanded it more instead of cramming it all together and throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck, it could have been beyond how good it was. And I'm kind of bummed that we never really had anyone revisit the Headless Horseman.
It's weird, yeah. They definitely could. I mean, I think it's in the, like the National Registry. I think anyone can make a Headless Horseman movie. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that.
Yeah, but that's why it's up here. Just because, again, like my 9 and 10 were really more self-serving. 7, Deep Blue Sea were just more stuff that I personally remember a lot and have nostalgia for. But Sleepy Hollow, I think, is where it starts to be like, this is a good movie.
I get that. Yeah. That's a good one. So my number 8 is a movie I don't know if you've ever seen or if it's on your list, but it's actually a real fear I have, and it's called Arachnophobia.
Okay, so no, it's not on my list, and I've never seen it because I hate spiders and refuse. I've never seen that. 8-Legged Freaks. Anything with spiders in it, I will not watch.
Well, then this movie will scare the shit out of you because just like you, I don't like spiders either, and this movie goes right into that, and that's why it scares the hell out of me because it makes me just very uncomfortable the whole time. Stars Jeff Daniels. It's a pretty good movie. It's like it's not the best made movie, but I had to put it on this list because it really does get under my skin. Like I don't like seeing spiders, and I think they did a good job of really like selling that fear. Okay. I mean, the main character has the same fear and everything, and he's got to like overcome it to like save people. But I just, my God, it's well shot. I mean, Frank Marshall directed this one, so it's got some good talent behind and in front of the camera. I just feel like for me personally, a real fear of mine to get on screen like that. It's good. It's good enough. And they're remaking it, so. Okay, interesting. Yeah, and again, I won't watch it, and it's not fair, but I hate spiders. It makes me so uncomfortable. Even 8-Legged Freaks makes me uncomfortable, too. It's in the same way. Like, just seeing even though it's, stupid, it's a very dumb movie. But seeing, like, those big giant spiders, it does. I feel that. Like, you feel it, like, you get the, like, ugh. Yep, same thing, like, with films, later, like, The Descent and stuff. When people are, like, cave diving or scuba diving and stuff like that in caves, and they get stuck in like really tight spaces. Watching you feel that like claustrophobia? I feel it in my chest. I just feel a weight, and same thing with spiders. If I see someone, it's crazy that people do that for enjoyment. By the way, no way. Why? That's torture to me. Yeah, I would rather serve life in prison than have to do that for 5 seconds. Like they went out of their way for that vacation. It really upsets me. I guess we'll talk about that movie on our 2000s list. Yeah, probably. Probably if I had to guess. But good choice. I mean, again, spiders. Though can't do it. Me neither. I get that. That's why I made my list. Which brings me to my number 7, which is one you're probably going to hate, and you're kind of getting the theme here, but it's Lake Placid. Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, Lake Placid did not make my list. That is not a punt. You can talk about it now. Go for it. This is a nostalgia one for sure because it's literally just Jaws in a lake with an alligator or crocodile, whichever it was. You really love shark and alligator and fish movies. Did you see Crawl from a few years ago? Yeah. Did you like it? It was pretty good. Crawl was actually pretty good. I heard Crawl was actually a well-made movie. That's why I was asking. It was. Yes, that's the thing, because Crawl was more like the fear, like the aftermath of a storm and stuff, and there just happen to be alligators. This is like a super gator killing people, which is, ridiculous. But Crawl I recommend. Okay, I like to watch, just like we said with Jaws, I appreciate filmmaking, so even if I don't like the subject, I'll always try the movie. No, Crawl, I think, was a good film. Okay, so maybe I'll try Crawl. It's got a 4K. Yeah, well, Lake Placid, though, was not really a great film, but again, it's a cheese fest. And I love that. I love corny horror. I love just the cheese ball. There's the sleazy character, the scientist trying to figure out, what's killing people in this lake and whatever. And, it's a crocodile. That's all. It's just a crocodile that's coming up and eating people. And I just can't get enough of it. There's nothing redeeming about it. There's nothing good about it or great even.
But if you like kind of, creature features or animals killing people, I recommend Lake Placid. It's pretty hilarious. And then in the end, spoiler alert, they're like wondering how this crocodile got in this lake because they're not native or something like that. And there are like 4 baby gators that swim up to this little old lady who's feeding them. So it turns out there's just some woman who's raising these animals.
These fucking monsters?
Yep.
I haven't seen Lake Placid. I mean, if you say it's like cheesy and stupid, maybe I'll try it.
Oh, dude, I don't know. Because you really yelled at me for Deep Blue Sea, so I don't know that I recommend Lake Placid. But again, this is
my disappointment.
This is strictly a nostalgia one for me because I remember me and like my brother watching it over and over and over again.
Okay, it's fair. Like, I get that. I don't think you've seen my number 7, which is The Frighteners, even though I gave you the Blu-ray to watch.
Yeah, no, I still haven't watched it yet. But I have the Blu-ray, so I can watch it.
Because I upgraded to the beautiful 4K because I love The Frighteners. Directed by Peter Jackson, because before he did the Lord of the Rings movies, he only really did horror. Good at it, too. And The Frighteners is a horror comedy, but more... This one's leaning a little bit... Like, the comedy is light. It's not a straightforward horror comedy. The whole movie itself is a ghost story. It's a light ghost story. Okay. Michael J. Fox is in it as the lead character. And he basically... he hunts ghosts. But it turns out that he's actually really friendly with these ghosts. And he's just scheming people.
Okay.
But then... somebody is actually really killing people. And he does have this talent of seeing ghosts, so... It's a mystery movie, like who's actually doing it.
Okay.
And Dee Wallace is in it, Jake Busey, so a lot of great actors appear in this movie, and it's well directed, well shot, and for me, it hits that fun factor of the 90s that I just absolutely love. And it's got CGI effects in it, done really, really well that hold up.
Okay.
Mainly because this film was made in New Zealand, and Peter Jackson's own company made these effects, so they didn't have a studio do it, so he actually like oversaw the team doing it, just like with The Lord of the Rings, how those CGI effects hold up.
Yeah.
So I think The Frighteners is one of those movies from the 90s with CGI that doesn't look like shit.
And that makes sense, because I feel like even in The Lord of the Rings, I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan, but you could kind of see some horror elements in it with the orcs and everything. The way that
he
those
loves
guys
horror.
Look.
Like, that's his thing. Like,
I could see that kind of translating over, and I mean the effects, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
because he killed it in that.
Made his own company to do the effects because, that way you don't have somebody else doing it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's definitely one I have to watch. It's on my list of things you've told me to that.
And Talk to Me, which I also gave you the Blu-ray for. You haven't watched, and I know you haven't watched it because after you see it, you're going to text me and tell me how much you love it. Because everyone who I've recommended Talk to Me to has loved the movie.
Well, I'll try to watch it this weekend.
Okay, yeah. You'll let me down, I'm sure. So, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is one you're going to hate, and it's because I like slashers and campy horror movies, and that is I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah, I've made it very clear here on the channel. I hate this movie.
Yeah, yep.
I prefer a scary movie which spoofs this.
Well, listen. Scary movie is great.
Yeah.
All right. And I think the first one of that whole thing is the best.
Yeah, and because it's basically a perfect spoof of I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream.
Yeah. But I picked this one because, again, it's the nostalgia value. I remember seeing it when I was younger, and I probably watch it once a year.
Oh, wow.
Because it's just, I don't know, I even watched the TV series they made recently, which is horrible, by the way, don't recommend it.
I wasn't going to watch it.
But the original film, I think it's good. I think it's got all the corniness, all of the tropes that you want. It's got everything that you want in kind of a slasher film. I mean, granted, at this point in the 90s, we were kind of getting into the territory of like Scream and stuff like that, where it was
meta
and making fun of horror. And this one didn't do that. This one was like trying to be a serious like 80s slasher film.
I feel like this kind of falls in the line with those teen comedies of the time, like Varsity Blues and I don't remember the hell, She's All That. All that's kind of all those kinds of movies that were coming out in the teen drama, and they decided to like add a horror element to it.
Yeah, but I still think it's a decent scary movie. I mean, I don't recommend seeing the rest of them. I don't remember how many there are, but the first one is
3 in a show now. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I know that the next year I still Know What You Did Last Summer came out.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay.
I refuse. I've seen the original and the TV series, and I will stick with the original as the only one you need to see.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm happy that this made your list. I just always think of the scene in Scary Movie where they hit the guy like they do in this movie.
Yeah.
And the guy's like just picking up his boot, and they're like, "Oh, we gotta kill him," and he's like, "It's not necessary." Like,
I'm okay, guys. Don't worry.
No, and then they throw the thing at him and knock him out again. So that's always what crosses my mind. And my number 6, which I didn't plan on it being here, I just realized now that it's actually kind of funny. But it's The Sixth Sense.
Oh, nice. No, I actually did not put this one on here because I have never seen it.
Oh, wow. Really?
I
Is it
know.
because the twist ending was spoiled for you and it's, you don't feel like you can go back?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, obviously everyone at this point, I mean, from when I was even younger and getting into horror movies, I already knew the ending.
Yeah,
so
this
I guess
was
I just
spoiled for me too.
I guess I just never. I mean, it's shitty for me to not, but I just never got around to going back because it's like, well, I kind of know already.
See, the thing is actually, I think this movie, even after you know the twist, you look for all the hints, and M. Night Shyamalan did such a good job of, like, laying it out for you, like, the whole story. You know, it's just a kid, basically, who, he sees dead people, he sees ghosts, and he doesn't know why, and he's talking to a doctor about it, because his mother, played by Toni Collette, great performance, by the way. This movie actually is very much a horror drama. There's a scene in this movie in a car, because you haven't seen it, I'm not going to tell you, and I want you to see it. Like, that, actually, the first few times I watched this movie made me cry. It's such a beautiful scene, and in this horror movie, and then it's a lot about grief and loss. That's really the theme of this movie.
Yeah.
At the very end of the movie, obviously, everybody finds out, the big spoiler is that Bruce Willis has been dead the whole time, and still going to work.
Spoiler alert,
Yeah.
Jesus.
He's still going to work and being a therapist, poor guy.
Yeah.
I don't know where the checks were going.
Yeah.
But, for some reason, that's what he was still doing. That's the big thing, and that's what people take away from this movie. But if you've never seen this movie, it is a great, even, like, just like Dennis, even if you know the ending, it's still such a good, well-made movie, and has some really sad scenes in it. So I recommend it.
Yeah, it's on my list too. I know I keep saying that, but it's just one of those things where it's shame on me. I should have watched it already, but it's
Shame.
I just kind of, like, every time I think about it, there's newer stuff I'd rather see.
Yeah, I get that.
Or things that you recommend, like the Frighteners and stuff, or Man-Eater, as I called it in our other video, where I want to see those first. I've never seen it. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I get that. You know nothing about those, and you already know where this movie's heading, so you're just waiting for that to come up.
Exactly.
I understand that, and that's a big problem with a lot of M. Night Shyamalan movies. He, like, just forces the twist in, but I think his first two movies, this and Unbreakable, he did it his best.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, too, is, like, I got into him a little later and started watching his, I guess, newer stuff. And I don't love, because sometimes a lot of his newer stuff, I feel like you said he forces twists. It's like
almost people expect it, and I think he has to I gotta do something to live up to, like, what I am.
Yeah, like the weight of the big twist ending of The Sixth Sense. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but that was like his breakout.
That's his first, like, major movie he ever made.
Yeah, so I feel like the weight of that and having to come up with a twist ending like that.
And then he did it again with his next three movies. Like, Unbreakable has a great twist, Signs has a great twist, and then The Village has a bad twist. And then from that point on, it's like, that's kind of like, and then he kind of comes back around. I actually thought that his newest movie, Knock at the Cabin, is his best movie since Unbreakable.
Love that film. Loved it. But
that
also,
was back on track for him, where it's a well-made movie, and like, Old was half good. The explanation at the end was dumb.
Yeah, so that was actually, I was going to say, Old I saw recently, and the whole time you're like, wow, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, the growth of the kids and everything they go through, and you're like waiting because obviously it's his movie. You're like, all right, so what's the explanation? And then it comes and you're like,
yeah,
that's the explanation.
It was just that's what really killed the explanation for the movie. And again, it just feels like he forced that ending in. Like, if he would have let it a little bit more ambiguous, I think it could have been a better film. But I feel like, again, people expect something from him, and unfortunately, that's how you end up with movies like Old, which had some great ideas in it.
Yeah,
so
it did.
It's just more disappointment than bad.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so that was my number 6. So what's your number 5?
My number 5 is one that I may get some debate that it's more a thriller or a drama, but I think it's a horror because it is pretty scary, and that is Cape Fear.
Cape Fear was one that I actually didn't put on my list, but I love that movie.
I saw it recently. Well, not recently. It was probably last year was the first time I ever saw it, and I've seen it a couple times since. I think it's so good. It's something about it is... I mean, also, for you wrestling fans out there, I really love Bray Wyatt, R.I.P. He's one of my favorite, like the last true favorite wrestler character of mine.
And he took so much from this guy.
Yeah, so like in watching it too, like it'll have a special place for me now because of what happened with Bray Wyatt and stuff. So, but even before that,
his accent, counselor.
Yeah, and he's just like so sure of himself that he's not going to get caught, and the way that he gets the daughter to like kind of fall for him.
That's
and just,
a fucked up scene, huh?
Oh my god. That's what I mean. There's so much about it. Like, yeah, it's not horror in the sense that he's jumping out and stabbing, killing, screaming, but what he's doing is real. He's like grooming this little girl and like trying
And it's
to...
all just to get back at Nick Nolte's character for what he did to him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he is still guilty. He just feels like he did a horrible job that he should be punished for it, which is crazy because he went and studied law in prison. So now he's like, no, this guy didn't do his job correctly. I could have got off.
Yep.
Even though I'm guilty, Nick Nolte couldn't let that happen. Like, he couldn't let him get off. I love that aspect. And Robert De Niro's great. And actually, it's a remake from a 60s movie that Robert Mitchum is in.
Okay.
And Robert Mitchum actually is in this movie at the beginning. He's one of the guys who comes in to let him out of jail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's got like that droopy face. Love Robert Mitchum. If you ever seen Night of the Hunter, he's amazing in it.
Interesting.
But yeah, no, I love this movie too. It didn't make my list, but no, this is one of my favorite Scorsese movies. It would be like in like the 11 to 15 Scorsese range. But yeah, I love it. I have one big question about this movie. It's like towards the end when they leave and he's tied up at the bottom of the car. What a fuck! How do you do that? You gotta.
Yeah, I mean that's maybe there's some sort of class in prison that taught him that because I've never seen how to do it and it don't make sense.
I love that when he gets they stop the car and he unhooks himself and that somebody sees him doing it and they just look at him like, I'm not gonna bring this up because this might be bad for me.
Yeah. Am I wrong? Doesn't he have like his belt? Or something?
I don't know how he
did
it. Yeah.
It's so weird, but that's what I mean. It's stuff like that that's like, it's almost like that primal fear of like someone being under the bed in a dark room, or it feeds on that stuff. Like this guy's doing stuff he's not supernatural Jason coming at you because he got struck by lightning. He's not Freddy in your dreams. This is a real guy
operating around the law so that like he doesn't get caught, and everyone knows what he's doing, but you can't actually stop him. He's that smart. I mean, he's an idiot. He's smart.
Yeah, it's almost like this to me is like a precursor to like law-abiding citizen.
Yes, I agree with that. Very much like clearly, a law-abiding citizen took a lot from Cape Fear, but Cape Fear does it way better. I would love a houseboat after seeing this too. Also, have you ever seen somebody put Pepto-Bismol in their whiskey? Like,
no, and that like blows my mind. There's so many things, and that's one that never seen and will never try.
Right?
Yeah, no shot, can't do it. But yeah, that's why it's my number 5. I know maybe it's not traditional horror for most people, but I just think it's one of those. It's a great film that has horror elements to it.
Oh, I think that's a good choice. I love that choice, actually. Love the movie. It didn't make my top 10, but that doesn't mean I don't love that movie. And then my number 5, I don't know if you've ever seen this one, but it's an Adrian Lyne directed film, and it's Jacob's Ladder from 1990.
I actually just saw this probably like 6 months ago or so for the first time.
Really? The original one?
Yeah.
Because there is a remake.
No, not the remake. No. I always go originals first. But it's your number 5, so let's hear what's your...
I love this movie. It's basically... this is a spoiler for the movie because I really think to understand the movie... basically what happens at the very beginning of this movie, Tim Robbins and his entire unit, Ving Rhames in this unit as well, his entire unit in Vietnam, they get attacked, and we don't know what it is, and then eventually it just cuts to him basically being on a New York City subway. It's in the 1970s. He's working for the post office, and he's just lost in life. And New York City is just like this dreadful, gray clouded place. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. He's seeing a bunch of imagery. He's dealing with the loss of his son, played by Macaulay Culkin. He's shacked up with somebody he works with, and he's divorcing his wife, and everything just seems horrible. And like he's getting sicker, and he doesn't know why. Danny Aiello plays his doctor in this movie. And everything's just getting worse and worse. And the whole movie feels like a nightmare. And that's because it is. It turns out that we've been in his mind the entire time as he's dying. And at the very end of the movie, he finally goes into the light and he passes on. And I love this movie.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why it's so touching. Like the story of it is so relatable. And that, here's this guy on his deathbed. And like, to me, it's symbolic of like him... wondering like, was this all worth it?
It is. He's going through like what they did to him in this like in his mind as he's like, it's about accepting death.
Yeah,
so.
And like looking at your life and looking back, and it's almost like twofold. Like you look back at your life and like, could I have made better decisions? It's almost like that message of death is a definitive part of life. So when it comes, you can try to fight it, but you're just going to be miserable if you do.
Exactly. Why resist something that you can't change?
Yeah.
So I agree, and the imagery of the head shaking back and forth is scary as hell. Honestly, the fever with the ice bath is one that always gets me, and that one scene with that song playing and the like tail coming out from her legs. Oh. I don't know. Did you enjoy it, or it wasn't for you?
No, I did. I mean, it's definitely, it would have probably not been in my top 15, but it probably would make my top 20. Because again, it's one of those where, it's weird that I have this kind of juxtaposition of things I like. I either like the corny stuff or the stuff with like a good story and deep meaning. Like it can't be both. It has to have one or the other. And this to me has that meaning that like if you watch it, even if you're not a horror fan, whatever it is, there is a deeper message that you can take out of it, you know? And I think that's a big reason why I don't have anything really bad to say about the film, because I think the message behind it all, I mean, the execution is great too. Like you said, there's a lot of vivid imagery that you feel as they're going through it that you're just like, oh man, like
and the New York City in the 70s look is just that gets me every time.
Yeah.
I'm always a big sucker for that, so that always raises it up for me.
Yeah, agreed.
You know? So that's why that was my number 5.
So my number 4, I have a feeling is going to be a punt based on discussions that we've had, because that is Candyman.
Yes, that is a punt.
I knew it, and I think I know where it is too.
And then my number 4, which I know you just watched The Exorcist for the first time, but I told you that this movie is fantastic, and that's The Exorcist 3.
I have not seen it, so...
Yes, I understand that. And The Exorcist 3 is very much a follow-up to The Exorcist.
Okay.
So the cop, Kligerman, who appears in that movie, which is my biggest plot hole, because this movie takes place in 1990 when it came out, and The Exorcist was 1973. That cop in that movie is very old. So he's still a cop in this movie. 17 years later, he's friends with Father Dyer, which we see in that movie. And, you know, the two of them are buddies now. George C. Scott plays him now. And, you know, basically all of a sudden these murders start happening again, and it's investigating this serial killer. It becomes more of like a cop drama almost.
Okay.
But the horror elements, this has the scariest jump scare in horror history in this movie.
Yeah.
100%. I've never seen a jump scare be more effective. You can see it on lists than in this movie. And you won't know it's coming. It scares the shit out of you. But also it has a sense of dread. And at the very end of this movie, you know, we kind of build up. Also in this movie is, what's his name from Child's Play?
Chucky.
What the fuck? Brad Dourif. He's in this movie and he does a great job. I hate you. He does a great job in this movie as well. I just think it feels very much like almost like an 80s hangover. It doesn't feel like very slowly paced like The Exorcist.
Okay.
It feels much more quicker, and it's I would say it's even more enjoyable than The Exorcist. It's not as well made as the original one, but I think it's a good follow-up to the story. It's directed by William Peter Blatty, who wrote the Exorcist book. And wrote the screenplay for The Exorcist, so bringing him now in to direct, you know, he told the story he wanted to tell. There's a director's cut, but I actually still prefer the theatrical cut. The studio kind of forced an exorcism in the movie.
Okay.
And I actually think it works. William Peter Blatty didn't like it, but personally I think you kind of need it, and it was the right choice.
So here's my question then. What happened to Exorcist 2?
Oh, The Heretic. We don't talk about that movie.
Okay.
That movie, it's good for one thing and one thing only. If you are just somehow an insomniac and you can't sleep, you put The Heretic on, you'll be out cold in 10 minutes, and then just watch 10 minutes each night, and you'll go right to sleep, and then start over when you're done.
You'll thank me for it!
All right, so note to self, Exorcist, and then Exorcist 3.
Yeah, and it's a continuation of they ignore the Exorcist. And nobody involved with the Exorcist came back for Exorcist 2 except for some of the actors.
Okay.
But none of the creators behind it, so it feels... It's just out of place. And they ignored it, too, so you can ignore it as well.
All right, good to know. Appreciate that.
Yeah, don't go to that. Just watch The Exorcist 3.
Okay, deal. Which will bring us to my number 3. I'm curious where this is on yours, if it is, which is...
This was a tough cut. This was my number 11.
You put it at number 11?
I had to. Because there's you haven't heard the top 3 yet, but 3 of these, and I haven't heard any of these. I only heard one of these movies too, which means one of these 2 movies didn't make your list, which scares me. So it didn't make my list, unfortunately, and I love it. You know that we did a video about the It movies last year. Me and Dennis here on the channel you can find somewhere. So we both love it, but you obviously love it way more than I do.
All right, so here's the thing: is it a made-for-TV movie?
It is.
100%. So I think the remakes that we got recently show what it could have been if a studio did it with an R rating and all that. However, you cannot take away from the original, because given the fact that even though it is a made-for-TV movie, it's still scary. I remember being so afraid of Pennywise. And Pennywise, not anything else he was in the film. The clown. That's what I was afraid of.
Tim Curry does such a good job, too, of scaring the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Like, he's the perfect evil clown because he kind of ropes you in, and then he's got those fucking teeth.
Yep.
You know? And he looks like a friendly clown. Like, you know, in the It movies, like in the more recent ones, Bill Skarsgård's twist on it, like, this clown looks scary. But this one, he's wearing, like, that stupid, like, windbreaker jumpsuit almost. And you're like, you know, he doesn't look scary.
Yeah.
Oh, but he is.
Yeah, that's
but
the
he
thing.
is.
It's so different. So again, I love Bill Skarsgård's It. I think he killed it as It and as Pennywise. I think his mannerisms, the way he like has his eye twitch and he drools and stuff, great. But Tim Curry's is the opposite in that like he is supposed to be a clown that kids trust, and so that he can get them and kill them. So he does a lot of silly clown shit, you know, where he's got the balloon, he's like beep beep, and you know honks it.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
He does it so well, and I think it's his voice, honestly. His natural voice is so in the right setting, which this was. It's scary just normally.
Yeah, he does have a scary voice. Like, even in Home Alone 2, like, he's kind of a villain, but he's scarier in the sense because his natural speaking voice is just a scary voice. I agree. Like, you know, and he also has that scary smile. Like, you know, like, you got somebody you don't want to see around you.
Yeah. The one scene, too, that always stood out to me and actually scared me as a kid, because, again, this came out in 90. You know, I was born later, but I watched it when I was young. Is the shower scene.
Shower scene is really
where
scary.
He comes out of the drain.
And then all the shower heads start to move in.
Yeah, I remember vividly as a young kid taking showers and looking at the drain and like being afraid and trying to stay away from it.
I've never seen a shower setting like that though in my life. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, you know, I wonder that myself because it was a school shower. So
school
like
shower and like there's no like barriers between like it was just shower heads. So everyone was in there balls out. Like,
yeah, they were just everyone's hanging brain, just like what's up, man? And then the balloon coming out of the sink.
Well, with the blood
and popping and being blood, like all that. There's just so many effects. He's almost like Freddy. In a way, you know?
He basically tricks your mind into believing things that aren't there.
Yeah, so that's why it's my number 3, because it's just, even though it is made for TV and some of, you know, I mean, again, the acting is whatever.
The giant spider at the end is pretty damn bad.
We don't talk about the spider at the end.
I think we both agree that it's just so hard to nail the second half of the book and the very end of this book.
Yeah.
Because it's just dead lights in the book. It's just very hard to do that, to bring it to the big screen. I really think that both of them tried, and they did the best they possibly could at the time.
Yeah.
That's always been my belief. It's just like, the material itself just does not translate well to the screen.
Yeah, it's also hard because the book itself is a lot more intense. Like, they're really violent and overly, like, sexual scenes. Like, I remember hearing when the new It came out, how the part 1 ended with them all doing, like, the blood pack.
Yeah.
In the book, I think it's like they all bang her.
Yeah, they all lose their virginity to her.
Yeah, like it gets really, really.
Which would have been weird
top.
to do in the movies.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think that's where the translation. Same thing with the big spider. Like, some of the stuff, the pages, like the words on the page, don't translate to the screen.
Yeah.
So they did what they could, but you could pretty much ignore the whole like slingshot to the belly of a spider thing. Because the rest of the film is great, and Pennywise is scary.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job with the child and adult actors. You know, get John Ritter in there as well.
Yeah.
So it's always cool to see that.
Yeah.
So I enjoy the movie. The one guy with the ponytail and the fucking big glasses. That's so 1990.
Yeah, and he's got the stutter, right? He struggles to talk, and
that's his big thing. All right, my number 3 is The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, that's a punt.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
That's the one I didn't think was going to be on your list.
Yep.
So we already did your number 3, right?
Yep. So that brings us to my number 2,
which is
Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, short punt. All right. This is the
punt.
one I didn't expect to be on your list, actually.
No,
So
sure.
now I'm really confused. So, yeah, The Silence of the Lambs is a masterpiece.
Yeah. I can't believe you put it at number 3. I guess maybe because like it's sort of not horror.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the only horror movies to ever win Best Picture, which is crazy. Swept the Oscars, too. All well deserved.
I mean, everything from start to finish on this film is done to the highest level. The cinematography, the acting, the character development, the story. Everyone knows their role. And I know that Silence of the Lambs it's always about Hannibal.
Yeah.
But Buffalo Bill?
Scary as hell. Wait, was she a great big fat person?
Yeah.
He's a fucking monster.
Yeah, and puts the lotion in the basket thing, and then of course there's the one where, he's dancing with his thing tucked in.
Little Horses is a great song.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much about it that is, and I like scenes stick out, and of course there's the ending with the night vision, which everyone will point out, how are there shadows if it's dark?
That's my least favorite scene in the movie. I actually don't love the night vision scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've always felt like it doesn't fit in the rest of the movie, which is like a drama that builds up. You know, we have a lot of different cool camera angles. I love how he sets the camera so close to their face and have them talk right into it.
Yeah.
And then even like when Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster are talking, he's in his his cell.
Yeah.
Each time we cut to Jodie Foster and back to him, it's always closer each time. So we're getting them closer together. I love that stuff.
And that's the thing. This is one of those ones that it's a film first and then it's a movie.
Yes.
They clearly put all their effort into making this a work of art, where the cameras, like the way it's shot tells the story, the way that the characters interact tells the story. Like, everything develops perfectly.
Has the best transition, one of my favorite transitions, like when Scott Glenn is telling Jodie Foster and he's like, don't forget what he is, and then it cuts to Dr. Chills or whatever his name is, and he's like, oh, he's a monster. And like perfect.
Yeah, and even that role, the doctor, like, it's small, but he knew exactly what he was doing. He went all in. He was sleazy as ever, and
he was a piece of shit in his own way.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it really makes you feel for, and it's one of those ones where the villain obviously takes it. Everyone loves Hannibal. Like, without the Hannibal Lecter played by Anthony Hopkins, the film probably isn't as good as it is.
No.
Because he kills it in that role. The way he delivers his line, I think the accent is really what helps, because if he was just like an American guy talking, he wouldn't sound as sinister. I think the way his accent mixed with the calm, relaxed delivery.
Well, they said that, like, when he does all his killings, like, his heart rate doesn't raise.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. Yeah, it's like this genius who was given all these gifts of understanding all these other people. He can literally, and Jodie Foster brings this up to him, like, he can literally analyze every person, find every single one of their flaws.
Yep.
But he has the biggest flaw of any human being ever. He wants to eat people. Like, he can't control it. Like, that's what's crazy. Like, he is this smart. And I think that's something that they just don't explore. When we see serial killers, like, we've learned that serial killers they're usually highly intelligent.
Yeah.
But this guy was a psychiatrist.
Yeah. He was, and that's the crazy part, is he knows everything, and he basically mentally undresses everyone he ever talks to, where he in like a matter of seconds, he's like, I know you, I know what you fear, I know what you need, and like, I own you now. And it's true.
He breaks down Jodie Foster. That's why she like cries in her car, but she stays strong in there. But he's like, you're just one generation removed from white trash.
Yep.
And just basically breaks her down, and she knows that he nailed every fucking one of those.
Yep. Yeah.
And she went in her car and she fucking cried because this guy just broke her whole life down in 30 seconds.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, he doesn't need to be over the top and yell at you and curse at you.
No.
He plays the mental and emotional game and delivers it to the highest level. This was almost my number one. It's number two only because my number one, I think, it's just one of the greatest of all time.
Which is probably my number two.
Probably, but Silence of the Lambs, absolutely think it's one of the greatest films, not even just of the 90s, but of all time. Not even horror genre. Any film ever made, Silence of the Lambs has to be in probably like the top 5 to me.
It's weird. My top 3 I can alternate, honestly, between like I love all 3 of these movies, and all 3 of them are in my like top 30 all-time films.
Okay.
Like, I love all of these movies. I think they're all masterpieces in their own way.
Yeah.
And this movie, again, I watched this 2 weekends in a row pretty recently, because I was comparing the Criterion Blu-ray and the Kino Lorber 4K. I fucking wasn't bored. I could have put it on again. I love it that much.
Yeah. No, it's that good. That's why it is my 2, but now I'm concerned about what your...
My number 2 is Scream, which I assume is your... Yeah, I figured that. So then that brings us to your number 1, which is Scream.
Yeah. Yeah. So since it was just your number 2, slight punt for my 1, why don't you take the lead?
Well, this movie, as we both know, it saved the horror genre. It saved the slasher genre. Horror in the early 90s, I don't think we have too many early 90s horror movies on our list, and a lot of them are basically horror dramas, honestly. Yeah. But like the slasher genre was dead, gone. There weren't any coming out. 1996, Wes Craven, one of the kings of the slasher genre, a couple years after A New Nightmare, decided to make a meta-horror film that calls out all of its tropes and flips them on their head, and then also on top of that, it's entertaining as all hell.
Yep.
all the characters. You love the legacy characters that we still see going on with, Nev Campbell, David Arquette, Courtney Cox before her haircut was really bad. Everybody, Matthew Lillard, everyone does a great job in this movie.
Hit me with the phone, Dick! Fucker, where are you?
I mean, this is what the slasher genre, this is what the horror genre needed, was somebody to actually point out all of the tropes, and it's just done so well.
I agree. I think that everything in this film, it's a 10 out of 10 to me.
100%. There's no doubt.
It's one of those ones where almost the fact that it calls out the tropes makes it better because, it knows what it is. It knows what it's doing. It knows what it's making fun of. And the acting is fantastic. Wes Craven just knows what he's doing. We talked about him briefly in a few of our videos about being one of the greatest of all time, especially in horror. And he reinvents himself. And I think after New Nightmare, I think I've heard you say before, was like the prequel to Scream.
Yeah.
It set the stage.
It did.
Scream to me, it fires on all cylinders, everything about it, and it even it did pay homage to Psycho with the main character. Drew Barrymore's in it for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, she's the lead, dead right away.
They put her in the poster as the lead too. It's crazy. They wanted to mislead you. Very much inspired by Psycho.
Yeah. Which I think is great. Yeah. The tropes are just fantastic. I think that, again, like I was saying, leaning into them, and I think that's the part that's great through all of them, how you always have the explanation of oh, it's the first movie, this is what happens. Oh, it's a sequel, this is what happens. Oh, this is the third in a trilogy, now the rules are different. And the way that it basically tells you everything that should happen, but doesn't ruin itself, is so impressive to me, because I feel like it never spoils itself.
No, it doesn't. And by the end of it, you were very surprised by the outcome of this movie. It's very believable, too, which is awesome. I mean, they kind of get a little convoluted, like in some of the other movies, but I still believe, and I know we've talked about this numerous times, the Scream franchise is very consistent. Yes, this is a 10 out of 10, but even at its worst, I think it's like a 7 out of 10, this franchise.
Yeah, I think this started it all, obviously, but I think you go through... I genuinely 100% stand by this opinion. There is not a bad Scream movie.
No, there's not. There's some things that you might not buy into as much, but for the most part, they're always well made, well intended, good effects. This one, even this one, half the movie takes place at one party.
Yeah.
You think that could be that could be boring. Nope, not the case. Very interesting, perfect set design here. I mean, they picked everything well. Even intertwining the Halloween score into the Scream is fantastic. When I watch Halloween now, and we get to that segment, I start thinking of Scream.
Yeah.
And that's how you know it's a good movie. Same thing with Psycho, when he says we all go a little mad sometimes. I don't think of Anthony Perkins.
Yep.
I think of Billy Loomis saying it.
Yep.
That should just tell you the lasting impact. So I agree with this being your number one. I go back and forth, if this is my number one or what is my number one, which is Candyman. I love this movie. Came out in 1992, the year I was born, so me and the greatest horror movie ever came out at the same exact time. It is a 10 out of 10. It takes a simple story, an urban legend story, Bloody Mary. What if you just said Candyman? Even that name could sound stupid as hell, Candyman. Somehow, Tony Todd, everybody makes this, Virginia Madsen, they make this entire movie work. I love the cold feeling of Chicago, that building that everyone lives in, that just run-down apartment building in the heart of Chicago is just menacing, scary on its own, explaining the gentrification of things. That's one thing I really love about it, is the cultural things that they're talking about in this movie, the deeper meaning of it. I love all those aspects in this movie. Candyman only kills one person too, but but with the dead bodies they find, that image when they find her one friend and she's all drained of blood and she's white now.
Yep.
That is horrifying.
Yeah.
He even kills the one guy, splits him from gut to gullet, comes through the window like that. I love this movie. I watch it twice a year. It's disgusting. It's just that good. It's entertaining too, while still having a deeper meaning to it, and that's the sign of a great horror film.
I agree. That's why it was up there in my... it's in the top 5 for me. It's at number 4, like you said. Again, it didn't make it up there because I just feel like my other 3, It, Silence of the Lambs, and Scream, I personally like more.
Yeah.
But it's not knocking the film itself, because like we were saying about Silence of the Lambs, I think this is a great film. Yeah. I think the story behind it has great meaning. I think the actors were really good in what they were doing. They executed everything perfectly. There's obviously the scene that everyone knows with the bees.
Yeah, which Tony Todd got paid $1,000 for each bee sting.
Nice.
Those are real bees, because again, today they'd be CGI bees, but back then, There's no CGI. I mean, like, it was like there was, but they weren't making bees.
So I mean, he must have made like $4 million because that was a lot of bees.
Oh, coming out of his mouth, and you can honestly kind of see it in his eyes a little bit. Like this is hard because first of all, I wouldn't do that. I hate bees. Like Tony Todd is a god for doing that because I'd be like, well, you need a new actor. Yeah. Because I'm not doing this.
I think that he was cast perfectly as Candyman, though. His voice is just... Because he's all... Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he not the guy in Final Destination, too?
Yeah, he's Death.
He's the mortician, right?
He's like the face of Death.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no,
that's his voice is so intimidating, but also kind of soft. So it's almost like... It almost welcomes you while also terrifying you. Mm-hmm. And I just... Again, I agree with you. I definitely understand why this is your one. It is in my top 4. And like I say with all these lists, pretty much my top 4 or 5 could always change depending on the mood. But they will be these films. But it's just a matter of, right now in the moment. It's
like the 80s, I had a lot easier with my top 3. But this one, I go back and forth all the time. Like with a lot of Scream, it's very hard. I feel like Scream is the best horror film of the 90s just because of cultural significance. It saved the 90s. I mean, it saved horror. Like, if you were to put, I think that there's Halloween, Scream, I think those are like the 2 top horror movies ever made because 78 and Psycho, like those are like culturally significant. Like they took horror to the next level. Without Scream, we wouldn't get there to where we are now. Same thing with Halloween. We wouldn't have slashers without Halloween. So like they're culturally significant. They might not be my favorite, but what they did for horror movies, I without them, same thing you were saying in the 80s with Friday the 13th, you need these movies to take us to the next level. We wouldn't get certain movies without them, and we wouldn't get half the movies in the late 90s and early 2000s without Scream. Yeah. So, with that being number 1, I would say that's probably the more deserving number 1, but I still think Candyman is my favorite.
Yeah, and that's fine. So now, before we sign off on this list, did you see the remake of Candyman, and what were your thoughts on that versus original?
Well, it's funny because it's not a remake. It's actually a sequel.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
People always, I don't know why they did that, and Scream did the same thing. I fucking hate that. Like, stop doing that. Just name it, yes, there's 2 Candyman sequels which are bad. So, I mean, I guess you could have just called it Candyman something else. And then just told us that it's Candyman, the sequel to Candyman. Yeah. Because we bring back the one girl whose son Anthony is in this movie. Mm-hmm. We bring her back, and she's talking about him and everything, so it's the sequel to that. Okay. And it explains more of the legacy of Candyman and what Candyman represents. I actually thought it was really good. Okay. It's not as good as the original, but it's definitely a fantastic film on its own. It's like a 7, 8 out of 10. It's not the most special movie, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I've only actually ever seen the original Candyman. I haven't seen any sequels or the new one, so.
The 2 sequels are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
one of those.
Don't watch those. I watched those once in my lifetime, and it's a big quality drop. Okay. Now, the remake or sequel, you should watch. I think you like that. Just watch Candyman, then watch that, because it ignores the sequels anyway.
Perfect.
Like a lot of these movies love to do.
Yeah, they love doing that now.
Yeah. So, anyway, guys, let us know your top 10 lists in the comments below. And don't forget now, we also have channel memberships, so make sure you join those. I want to thank all of my producers and directors and everything out there for helping us and supporting the channel. You can as well. And if you don't got the money to throw away, don't you worry about that. Just like this video, subscribe to the channel, get out in those streets, and tell your friends about us. And we will be seeing you around.